Incredible heroics. Gunslinger rescues girl in blizzard, uncovering her amazing ranch legacy. Jake stood at the edge of his deserted land, the chilling Wyoming wind biting cruelly at the stubble on his jaw. Years of hard living and harder choices had transformed him into a gaunt figure, a specter of a once promising future. The murmurs of disdain from the townsfolk echoed in his ears, a constant reminder of the mistakes that had left him outcast. Now the snow began to blanket the earth, freezing over memories he could never shake. As the first flakes danced down, the weight of isolation settled heavier on his shoulders. He felt like the lone tree in a barren field, desperately rooted yet longing for escape. Each gust carried a reminder of how far he'd fallen, a gunslinger instead of the ranch hand he once aspired to be. With every frozen breath, self-loathing festered under his rugged exterior. Sometimes he questioned the purpose of his existence. Was he to remain a recluse forever? Just a shadow among the shattered dreams of a town that had long forgotten him? Inside the crumbling walls of the historic ranch house, Emma's heart raced in rhythm with the howling storm. The blizzard outside wove an eerie silence into her solitude, and with it came the daunting weight of her family's legacy. Known for her kindness, yet dismissed as weak, she longed to escape the shadows cast by her father's failures. The stark truth was that she had never been seen for her capabilities, but instead through the lens of her lineage, a legacy entwined with whispers of injustice and loss. The walls seemed to close in on her as she wrestled with despair, her breath fogging the windowpane where she longed for a glimpse of hope. It was then that she heard her father's teachings seep into her mind, reminding her of the depths of knowledge hidden in dusty tomes tucked away in the attic. A flicker of determination ignited within her. If she hoped to revive her family's fortunes, she had to embrace the spirit of that legacy, beyond the losses, beyond the whispers. Before they could continue, perhaps it was time for a slight interruption. I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Emma grasped the dusty book, the winds screamed louder, crashing against the house in an angry thrash. Jake, meanwhile, trudged through the blinding snow, questioning his resolve. Every step forward felt laden with judgment from the townsfolk whose lingering whispers echoed in his head. Wouldn't they see him as a fool for trying to help? And yet, Emma's face infiltrated his thoughts, one of the few souls untouched by his past. What if he could prove his worth, if only to himself? With a burst of effort, he forced open the door of the ranch, his breath raw in the thick, bitter air. He barely took in the sight before him. Emma, immersed in her father's abandoned hopes, looked up in alarm as he entered. Together, in that charged moment of foreboding and possibility, the two stood on the cusp of a destiny forged in the flames of their shared despair. Then a deafening crash erupted. The barn roof gave way, sending a shower of snow cascading down. Fragments of wood splintered, and they knew then they were plunged into a chaos that threatened to engulf them both. Would they fight the storm's fury together, or would the harsh realities of their pasts bind them in chains? Panic surged through Emma as snow and debris fell around her, but amidst the chaos a spark of lucidity ignited in her mind. This was the moment she needed to seize. She had wrestled with the weight of her family's legacy for long enough. This was her chance to redefine it. Fear gripped her heart, but so did determination. She glanced at Jake, whose own conflicting emotions played across his rugged face as the storm raged around them. "Are you okay?" She managed to shout over the howling wind, gathering her wits about her. She couldn't afford to collapse under the pressure. Not now. Not when everything hung in the balance. Jake's eyes widened as reality set in. He hadn't come to rescue, yet here they were, thrust together in the clutches of imminent disaster. "I'm fine," he bellowed back, scanning the damage. In this moment, his years as a gunslinger began to meld into a sense of purpose that had long escaped him. He could either return to the shadows or rise to battle, proving himself in more ways than one. "Help me with the back door," Emma called, urgency in her voice. She grabbed at the old wooden frame that barely contained the remnants of the farmhouse from the storm's assault. Together, they could find a way out. The room felt stifling, closing in on them, and they both knew that staying still meant resigning themselves to chaos. In a rush, the two scrambled toward the rear exit, adrenaline coursing through their veins. With every shove against the door, Jake felt a flicker of hope, a chance to step back into the world instead of letting isolation suffocate him. It was immediately apparent that Emma was not just a fragile daughter with a tarnished lineage. She had grit in her voice, steel in her resolve. She was not merely a reflection of her father's failures. She was a potential force for change. Clamping his hand around the doorknob, Jake felt the weight of his past heavy on his chest. "They'll mock me," he muttered, wrestling with the internal tides of doubt. "You know how they talk." Emma turned, fierce determination shining through the stormy chaos. "Let them. It's our choice to redefine what they think." This challenge shifted something inside Jake. Her voice pierced through his self-doubt, sparking a courageous notion that perhaps cooperation, no, connection, was the path to redemption. Finally, with one solid push, they flung the door open, the icy air whooshing in and forcing the snow toward their feet. The blizzard enveloped them as they stumbled outside, breathless and alive amid the raging white. In that instant, they became partners against the storm, bonded not just by circumstances but by the potential of shared resilience. "Follow me," Emma shouted, pointing toward a path around the barn partially obscured by the snow. Each step was a struggle, traction slipping beneath their boots, but both felt an inexplicable newfound energy coursing through them. This wasn't just about survival. It was about facing the whispers of their pasts. Jake caught a glimpse of the girl beside him, revitalized as she exerted her will against the elements. Could she be the light guiding him out of the shadows? And could he, in turn, help her navigate the darkness of her family's tarnished legacy? As they forged ahead, deeper into the snow-whipped wilderness, he began to realize they were entwined in a battle greater than the storm itself. This was a fight for their identities, their destinies. And just as the thought settled, an unmistakable sound broke through the howling winds. Voices. Anticipation mixed with dread. Would they be allies or adversaries? With uncertainty twisting in his gut, Jake took a bold step forward. The moment had come to confront not just the storm, but whatever awaited them beyond it. Would they stand united against their pasts, or would the blizzards of their histories pull them apart once again? A chill swept through Jake's body, fueled by the piercing wind and the looming presence of the uncertain voices in the distance. He and Emma pressed on, the sensation of urgency pushing them further into the thickening storm. A sudden gust nearly knocked him off balance, but Emma reached for his arm, grounding him with a steady grip. "Stick close," she urged, her voice a lifeline in the chaos. There was something about the steadiness in her tone that bolstered his resolve. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance, she was a source of strength. Each step forward was a small act of defiance against their pasts, and he felt a stirring within himself, a waking of dormant potential. As they progressed, shadows on the edge of visibility hinted at impending figures. Jake's heart raced. Their past pains clung to him, amplifying every negative thought, whispering of failure and scorn. They could be challengers, the very ones who had demeaned him. Yet another part of him fought against that crippling fear, recognizing the absurdity of his predetermined narrative. "Who do you think they are?" he shouted, the words nearly swallowed by the wind. Emma squinted through the blizzard, her determination unyielding. "Whoever it is, we have to find out. We can't turn back now." As they neared the shadows, Jake could make out forms huddled together, bundled against the cold. To his surprise, as they stepped closer, he recognized familiar faces from his past, a mixed reaction welling within him. These were his old friends from bygone days, before he'd faded into obscurity. The relief that washed over him was altered by the darkness of unshakable doubt. Would they remember who he used to be, or the man he had become? "What the hell are you doing out here?" one of the figures called, a raspy voice breaking through the howling storm. It was Mark, once a comrade in arms, his expression a blend of exhaustion and surprise. We're just trying to find safety, Emma interjected, standing taller despite her shivering frame. The light she radiated pushed back against the swirling chaos, a contrast that sparked intrigue within Jake. He wanted to protect her, to shield her from scrutiny, yet the surprising instinct to stand on equal ground took hold. Mark's eyebrows knit together as uncertainty washed over him. "And who's this? Just a girl lost in the blizzard?" "Stop," Jake commanded, stepping forward without thinking. There was an unexpected sharpness to his voice, perhaps spurred by Emma's silently standing by him. In that moment, he was no longer the man burdened by judgments of the past. "This is Emma," he enunciated, looking directly at Mark. "She's not just anyone. We're doing everything we can to survive just like you." With that declaration breathed into the snowy air, Jake felt the remnants of his former self shatter, bit by bit. Standing not as a shadow of his past but as a beacon of resilience was a new taste, one he longed to savor. Emma grasped his hand, grounding him as voices murmured judgment among their peers. But Jake realized that he no longer feared their words. He chose to define this moment, this narrative, for himself. It shifted something immeasurable within him, a clarity of purpose igniting like a fire amid the frost. "Listen," Jake began, gathering courage. "This blizzard shouldn't tear us apart. It can bring us together. If we all join forces, we can get through this." As the words escaped his lips, a sense of anticipation hung thick in the air. Would they rise together, facing the blizzard shoulder to shoulder? Or would they let remnants of the past tear them down yet again, leaving Jake to return to the shadows he had just begun to escape? An eerie quiet settled in the winds, leaving only the soft whistling of the frozen gust. Emma's gaze remained steady, searching for clarity among the crowd. Would she be the one to inspire change, not just for herself, but for all of them? With the weight of destiny surpassing the howling chaos, the moment of truth stretched taut before them. A resolution beckoned. It was decision time. Would they clasp hands in solidarity, or continue to let isolation rule their lives? Before Jake could contemplate further, another voice broke through the murmuring tension, demanding an answer. "Are you willing to face the storms of your past to find strength in each other?" Each ember of doubt ignited anew, and below the enveloping layers of snow and fear, they faced the truth that challenged them all. How far would they go to unlock the strength within? Would they choose to face the storm in unity, or would the past fracture their path again? The silence that followed the question was oppressive, each heartbeat echoing in Jake's ears. Uncertainty ground against the backdrop of swirling snow, amplifying his growing resolve. Confronting the past was daunting, but he sensed the weight of potential resting behind him, the kind that Emma had sparked. As he locked eyes with Mark and the others, he felt the fissures of doubt beginning to coalesce into something more formidable. "Let's find safety together," Jake said, the words spilling out with unexpected confidence. "We can't let what happened before dictate what happens now." Mark dropped his gaze momentarily, but Jake noticed the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Then a nod, almost imperceptible but significant nonetheless. It was a sign, one he needed to see as validation, a signal that the possibility of unity might overshadow the bitterness of their history. Emma squeezed Jake's hand tighter, as if echoing unspoken encouragement. She looked around at the gathered faces. "We all have stories, scars from our past. But this storm doesn't discriminate. We can either keep fighting each other or pull together to survive." Jake watched as the group shifted slightly, uncertainty mingling with curiosity. Some gazes flickered with recognition, while others remained stony and defensive. "What do you suggest?" came a new voice, a woman from the back, her expression cloaked in fatigue but illuminated with interest. "You want us to trust you?" The challenge ignited a spark in Jake, galvanizing his focus. How could he convince them? The very thing he feared the most, being not enough, being dismissed, was now the catalyst for his newfound determination. "I may not have all the answers, but I do know we're stronger as a collective. We've all battled our own storms. Together we could navigate any blizzard." The words fell around them, settling into the hearts of his childhood companions. He could almost hear their inner dialogues, memories of stubborn youth, echoes of the friendship that once united them. The window of opportunity he craved had cracked open just enough for him to see hope seeping through. "Let's find shelter first," Mark finally conceded, his shoulders relaxing as he regarded Jake with tentative respect. "We can talk about everything else once we're not freezing to death out here." Quickly, a consensus began to form. They were, despite everything, still a people woven together by shared history. Jake felt the corner of darkness inside him pull back slightly. Perhaps the quest they'd undertake wouldn't just be physical. Perhaps it would heal deeper wounds, rewrite old scripts. Moving away from the storm's relentless clutches, the group huddled together, inching towards a shadowed building silhouetted against the swirling snow. Each step spoke volumes. Parts of Jake's past were returning, but instead of dragging him down, they now tethered him to possibility and connection. Amid the uncertain chatter, Jake sensed Emma's steady presence beside him. Their hands broke from each other, but she turned to face him, her eyes flickering with gratitude. In that moment, she was not just a companion, but a pivotal force in his transformation. As they approached the door, Jake felt a potent surge of conviction. This could be the start of something new, a chance to rebuild his legacy, to take command over his narrative. Collectively, they faced both past and future, creating a nebulous path forward. Just then, Mark's voice resonated through the gathering, igniting a fresh spark of trepidation. But what if the storm isn't just out here? What if the real test is what's buried inside? A palpable tension filled the air, turning Jake's heart to ice once more. In that moment, he realized that this was about much more than survival from the storm outside. It was about confronting the blizzards within, his fears, regrets, and the remnants of an identity he wished to redefine. The impending journey suddenly loomed far greater than the frigid weather. It would demand courage from them all. How much were they willing to reveal? Would the strength they sought be found not just in the shelter from the storm, but in facing their own internal blizzards in the aftermath? As he stepped through the threshold into dim light, Jake knew this was merely the beginning of a battle that could either unite them or fracture hopes once more. Would they have the courage to confront the storm inside that threatened to unravel everything they were trying to create? The door creaked open, offering a momentary reprieve from the biting wind that howled outside. Inside, the old building was dark and musty, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and stale memories. Jake paused, scanning the room, aware of the gravity of the threshold they had crossed. They had escaped the storm, but here, where the light was dim and shadows lingered, lay the greater challenge, the confrontation with the past. Jake stepped in first, feeling Emma's presence hovering just behind him, a steady anchor against the uncertainty ahead. They were joined by the rest, some shuffling, others hesitating, each weary face a reflection of personal battles yet to be fought. "Find some seating," Mark called, breaking the weight of silence, his voice echoing in the empty space as they settled. "We'll figure this out together." As they complied, the group rearranged themselves around the room, forming a loose circle. Jake chose a spot against the wall, the coldness of the surface grounding him, and glanced around at familiar faces transformed by time and experience. He couldn't help but wonder what they were all carrying, what invisible scars lay beneath their resilient exteriors. They began with small talk, a false sense of ease clinging to their words as if each confession would warm the chill in their bones. Yet beneath this basic exchange pulsed an underlying tension, a mix of unresolved feelings and unspoken doubts that settled heavily like the snow outside. Jake could feel his pulse quicken as he regarded them. Was it possible to turn the conversation deeper, to initiate the healing he so desperately sought? It was a risk, a chance that could lead to breakthroughs or to more division. He weighed his options carefully. Eventually he spoke, his voice calmer than he felt. "We're all here for a reason. We've faced a lot in our lives, but this storm is a reminder we're still alive, survivors. And it's not just the external storms we need to prepare for. It's the internal ones." Mark met his gaze, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "What are you really suggesting, Jake?" The question hung in the air, a challenging invitation that demanded Jake's resolve to crystallize into action. "I know it's easier to bury painful things, to ignore wounds instead of addressing them," Jake replied cautiously. "But if we want to move forward, we have to confront what's been holding us back. We can't just carry the weight of the past without unpacking it." He felt the room shift. A collective intake of breath as unease began to ripple. In that moment, Jake locked eyes with Emma. She nodded slightly, as if urging him forward, urging him to extend the thread of connection. The tension transformed into an electrifying challenge. After all, what was there to lose by exposing their vulnerabilities? "Let's share," he suggested, each word dripping with a mix of courage and vulnerability. "I propose we each share something about ourselves, something we've never revealed or have been trying to escape. It's time to face our storms. Together." A murmur swept through the group, disbelief mingling with the fear of exposure. In their hesitations, Jake saw reflections of himself, the milliseconds between choice and silence, the old fears flaring to life beneath the weight of expectation. "You think this will help?" the woman from the back who had initially challenged him pressed. "What if it just opens old wounds? What if we end up feeling worse?" Jake breathed deeply, aware that this was a crossroads, a moment where his words were his empowerment or his undoing. What if it does, but what if it doesn't? A wound not shared festers. We've been through enough. Let's take the first step toward healing. Each face remained stern, perhaps wrestling with revelations hidden even from themselves. He realized that courage was not merely the absence of fear, rather it was choosing to act in its face. As he waited for their responses, the magnitude of what he had asked began to dawn upon him. The tension in the room thickened once more, the anticipation building within Jake. Would they take the plunge into vulnerability? Would they embrace their stories, thus facing the storms in a way they never had before? Just as he opened his mouth to speak again, Emma caught his gaze once more, her eyes reflecting a newfound determination. It was a look that did not just acknowledge uncertainty, but also the potential for amazing transformation through shared experience. The moment hung heavy, and Jake understood. This was a turning point. The storm outside might seem fierce, but it was the turmoil within each heart that really threatened to unravel them. And in that tension, there lay the unimaginable power to change their futures forever. Could he truly galvanize them into this communal reckoning? Would they face their inner blizzards? The collective silence felt like a storm on the brink of breaking, an impending release that could unleash truth and vulnerability, or could just as easily shatter the fragile bonds they were trying to rebuild. And as the quiet stretched on, testing their resolve, Jake braced himself for what was to come next. The silence was a weight, pressed firmly against Jake's chest, each passing second amplifying the tension. The confidence he had felt a moment ago began to waver, replaced with an unsettling doubt. What if he had overstepped? What if the very act of trying to bring them together pushed them apart? Mark shifted uncomfortably, breaking the silence. "Hey, I think what Jake is saying is something we all need, but it's terrifying," he admitted, vulnerability emerging through his brave face. "But if we don't do it now, when will we? Life's not going to wait for us to be ready." A tentative agreement rippled through the group, and that spark of shared trepidation ignited something deeper. Jake felt his resolve strengthen, the embers of possibility fanning into flames. "All right," he said, voice steadying. "Let's start from a place we can all connect with. Simple truths. I'll go first." He drew a deep breath, allowing the vulnerability to wash over him. "I struggle with overwhelming fear of failure. It's paralyzing. I'd rather hide than try and not succeed. It stopped me from pursuing what I really want." The admission felt like a stone thrown into a still pond, and the ripples of reaction were immediate. The woman who had challenged him, Hannah, exhaled sharply, as though she had been holding her breath. "Wow, I thought I was the only one," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Jake turned to her, urging her forward with a nod. "You're not alone, Hannah." Her eyes darted to the floor, mirroring the very fear Jake had just exposed. Then with a shuddering breath she continued. I carry an immense guilt for not being there for my brother. He struggled, and I was too self-absorbed to notice. He needed me, and I can't let that go. It haunts me. Sympathy coursed through the room, but more importantly, understanding blossomed. One by one, they began to share, their painful truths intertwining like the branches of a tree, fragile yet somehow strong. Emma recounted her battle with anxiety, describing how it often consumed her from the inside out, while Mark shared the lingering effects of his childhood trauma that had twisted his perspective on relationships. As the confessions flowed, Jake's heart swelled with a strange sort of hope. Each revelation was a testament to survival, scars illuminating the resilience they all shared. Yet beneath the surface, a troubling realization began to surface. The burden each of them carried had not only shaped their identities but also formed barriers between them, barriers that needed dismantling. Jake's mind churned with thoughts as they continued around the circle, both awe and fear intertwining in equal measure. Was he really prepared for the depth of emotional vulnerability he had evoked? Was everyone in this room truly ready to embrace not just their truths, but what lay beneath those truths? He felt the weight of their stories settling in his bones. Then, just as he felt a momentary surge of camaraderie, a dark shadow slipped into the room. A sudden gust rattled the windows, and the walls creaked ominously, echoing the tumult of emotions swirling within them. Jake's gaze flicked to Emma, whose face paled with the realization that vulnerability was not only liberating but also frightening. No sooner had the last confession left someone's lips than a new layer of fear crept in. The storm outside had grown harsher, but it mirrored the storm brewing within. Were they growing closer, or merely exposing a fracture that might split them apart? "Let's not get lost in this heaviness," Jake interjected, his voice rising to combat the collective apprehension. "We are unearthing this pain to find strength. Let it be a catalyst for change, not despair. We have each other to lean on, and together, we can face anything, internal or external." Their eyes flickered back towards him, a mix of hope warring with lingering fear. Their grasp on this precarious moment was tenuous, but every confession further wove them into something more resilient, and yet, as he glanced toward the door, a loud thump against it drew every eye, startling them from their shared vulnerability. Outside, an unrelenting wind howled as if demanding their attention. Jake's expression hardened. The unpredictability of the storm outside now echoed the unpredictable nature of their own revelations. What awaited them on the other side of that door? Was it the escape they sought, or an impending confrontation with their deeper fears? Jake felt the swell of anxiety as he deciphered that the true storm wasn't merely the one outside, it was the one within them that had yet to fully reveal its fury. Jake's gaze remained fixated on the door, the thundering wind pounding against it, drawing a parallel to the turmoil simmering inside him. Every confession had carved pathways to deeper fears, and he could sense an invisible barrier between him and the group. Behind the noise, an unsettling question tugged at his mind. Could they navigate the storm within, while grappling with the one outside? "Does anyone else feel like we're on the brink of something?" Jake whispered, breaking the heavy silence again. The group seemed to lean closer, as if drawn by a magnetic force. "Like, we're about to uncover something profound." Hannah nodded, her eyes wide. "It feels both liberating and terrifying," she confessed. "What if what we discover tears us apart instead of bringing us together?" Jake's heart raced. It was a valid fear, one he had resonated with before but had never articulated. He had built walls to protect himself from the very risks that could connect him to others. The vulnerability required to dismantle those defenses was daunting, yet he realized it was necessary not just for himself but for each of them. As he looked at each face, he saw a mirror reflecting his own struggle. The desire to connect surrounded by fears of rejection and discomfort, with intimacy. He understood now that this session had pushed them into the unknown, but real connection often required surrendering control to the chaos. "Maybe instead of fearing the unknown, we should see it as an adventure," Mark said, offering a tentative smile. "We're standing at the precipice. It's only scary if we let ourselves think about what might happen instead of what could happen." Jake felt a flicker of optimism with Mark's words, a shift in energy that ignited something more within him. The storm outside might threaten to engulf them, but the storm inside could weave them tightly together. This was their moment to reclaim power over their shared narrative. "Let's make a promise right now," Jake declared, his voice stronger than before. "No more hiding. We won't let our fears dictate who we are or the bonds we can form. We're here, with each other, and that counts for something." His conviction resonated, creating ripples of agreement. Emma's anxious posture softened, and even Hannah's eyes glimmered with resolve. They understood the stakes, but also the potential. A chance at transformation lay before them, waiting to be seized. As if sensing their collective determination, the wind outside lashed with even more fury, rattling the windows ominously. Jake felt a thrill run through him, a connection shared, not just heightened vulnerability but a raw, unfiltered strength. Each of them was counting on the others at this moment, grounding what could easily become overwhelming chaos. "We should delve deeper," Jake suggested, his mind racing through the possibilities. "Let's talk about what holds us back, why we hesitate to take risks. It's easier to isolate our fears thinking they're all ours alone, but maybe they're not. Maybe we can find a way to navigate through them together." A small nod from Mark encouraged him, and Jake pressed on, determined. What he had lacked in the past was the ability to see risks as potential growth opportunities. Each fear shared could become a stepping stone, and his task now was to guide them down that uncertain path. Then suddenly another loud thump echoed against the door, causing the group to jump. The sound pierced through their rising courage, a stark reminder of the unpredictability surrounding them. Fear and suspense intertwined, the spirit of the tempest reflecting their own journey into self-discovery. What if we're not ready to face whatever is on the other side? Emma's voice faltered, echoing the anxiety rippling through the room. In that moment, Jake felt a rush of clarity. The struggle they were enduring needed to be faced head-on. This was not just another session. It was the precipice of growth, a test that would forge them into something they hadn't dared to envision yet. "Let's face it together," Jake proposed, a new sense of purpose coursing through him. "Whatever is out there, we confront it united." As they all grappled with the fear of the unknown, Jake couldn't help but wonder, what awaited on the other side? In that instant, beneath the weight of their collective fears, he felt a burgeoning strength. They had the power to reshape their destinies. But Jake knew that the true test lay ahead. The question remained, would they emerge together or fracture under the strain of their vulnerability? The door thumped again, and this time it felt like a challenge, a call to action. The heaviness of the moment pressed down on Jake, yet he felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with anxiety. The relentless pounding on the door seemed to beckon them into a crucial turning point. Each heartbeat thudded like a drum, amplifying the tension in the room. "Okay." He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. "Let's break it down. The only way forward is through honesty." He leaned in, feeling the group shift, their attention sharpening. "What are we truly afraid of? Let's face it, one layer at a time." Emma hesitated, her fear palpable. I'm scared of not being good enough. I always hide behind a shield because I'm terrified of failing." Her voice trembled, but there was defiance in her tone. Jake admired her bravery. She was stepping into the light, shedding layers of her hesitation. Mark nodded thoughtfully. "I think mine is the fear of being judged. Every time I open up, I see people's faces change, like they're marking me down. What if they don't like who I am underneath?" Jake felt a wave of empathy wash over him. Each revelation chipped away at the walls he had so meticulously built, exposing shared vulnerabilities. "So even when we think we're alone in our fears, we're not," he said quietly, reflecting on how isolating those feelings could be. "They tether us together rather than drive us apart." Hannah, leaning forward, spoke up with a new surge of courage. "I realized I'm scared of being abandoned. Every time I trust someone, I'm waiting for them to leave. It's like I can't ever really relax, and that just makes the anxiety worse. It struck Jake how powerful it was to voice fears aloud. Each confession was a rope, binding them stronger together, rather than tying them to past traumas. He felt emboldened. The more they shared, the more solid their foundation became. We have to reframe what these fears represent. They're not our roadblocks, they can be our stepping stones. He felt the electricity in the air change as they began to see glimmers of hope emerging from their shared darkness. For the first time, he was leading the conversation rather than merely participating, and the realization sent warmth coursing through him. This wasn't just about confessing, it was empowering each other to grow. Emboldened by their honesty, Jake turned his focus inward. He had spent years shying away from revealing his own struggles, always quick to step into a guiding role without turning the lens on himself. I suppose I fear that if I let others in, they will see my shortcomings, he began, his voice steady despite the quiver in his stomach. But what if those shortcomings are actually the pieces that make me human? What if sharing those bumps can help someone connect with me? Jake's admission hung in the air, a raw vulnerability uncharacteristic of the persona he usually showed. It was liberating, but a nagging doubt still lingered in the shadows. Was he ready to expose the parts of himself he had kept hidden for so long? The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with anticipation. One by one the others shared, crafting a tapestry of fears and desires that bound them. In peeling back the layers of their souls, Jake saw not just fear, but also strength and resilience. They were forging a bond that he hadn't thought possible amid such chaos, but as they grown more comfortable revealing their truths, momentum surged in the room. The wind howled outside, its ferocity now mirroring their emerging courage. The small space felt charged, as if the energy of their vulnerabilities had ignited a spark of collective determination. Just then, another loud thud echoed through the door, louder this time. They all flinched, the spell of intimacy breaking momentarily as reality crashed back in. This time the sound felt ominous, like it had morphed from a mere nuisance into something threatening. Would it truly be their courage that prevailed, or would this storm snatch away their fragile assurance? Jake swallowed hard. They had touched on something monumental, but it was time to act. He needed to confront the shadows outside, but equally he felt unprepared for the storm that now brewed within. Let's not lose this, he urged, determination ringing in his voice. We can't unravel our progress just as we're discovering what we can become. If we can face our fears here, we can face whatever awaits out there. As he pushed open the door, the howling wind surged forward, and with it came the question burning in his mind. Could they confront both the storm outside and the storms raging within? Or would the world come crashing down before they could truly break free? The wind whipped around Jake as he stepped outside, tossing his hair into disarray, the cold air biting at his skin. Each gust felt like an embodiment of the fears swirling in his mind as he faced the chaos that awaited him. As he peered into the blizzard, visibility was reduced to mere feet, obscuring not just the physical space before him but amplifying the uncertainty of what lay ahead. In that moment, he resolved that turning back would no longer be an option. He had stepped into his role as a leader, and it was time to embrace whatever challenges awaited. The pounding heartbeats inside had to translate into actions outside. There was no retreating into the comfort of safety now. "Stay close," he called back to the others, his voice echoing against the howl of the storm. The group hesitated momentarily, caught in a web of their own fears, before they gathered behind him, prepared to take the next steps into the unknown together. As they trudged out into the frozen landscape, questions raced through his mind. What lay beyond the door? Would this venture lead to liberation or further entrapment? Each footstep seemed to ensnare him in deeper contemplation about his own vulnerabilities and the strength he had just uncovered within himself. The intensity in the air was palpable, not just from the fierce cold but from the resonance of their prior discussions about facing fears. Did they truly understand that the storm outside mirrored the storms within them? Every gust of wind was a reminder of their internal chaos, and yet something inside him ignited, urging him onward. Jake sensed a shift within him, a newfound clarity that emerged from the chaos. He had learned from Emma, Mark, and Hannah how their heartbreaks had shaped them, and he was determined to harness that knowledge. If they could embrace their insecurities in the warmth of the room, surely they could also confront adversity in this unforgiving storm. Suddenly he spotted something through the swirls of snow, a shadow moving against the white backdrop. Instinct kicked in. He raised his voice. "Over there! Follow me!" As they approached, tension coiled tightly in his gut. When they came closer, Jake's heart raced. It was a young girl no older than 12, struggling against the snow, her hat half tugged over her eyes, her cheeks flushed from the icy blasts. The moment carried the weight of urgency. This was someone who needed their strength. "What are you doing out here?" he asked gently, though the storm roared around them. "I was trying to find my way home," she stammered, tears freezing at the corners of her eyes. As he knelt down to her level, something sparked deep inside Jake. He had taken the lead for others, but now the stakes were personal. The girl's anguish was like a mirror reflecting his own hidden fears, of inadequacy, of failure, and ultimately of lost connection. Would he let his fears overwhelm him now, even with the potential for real impact? "Then let's get you home," he said, determination infiltrating his voice. The courage he had recently uncovered wasn't just for him. It could also become a lifeline for this girl. He took her hand, feeling the tremors run through her small body, and led her back, assuring the group with every step. In helping her, Jake realized that as much as he wanted to pull others from their storm, he was also liberating himself. His fears were overshadowed by an undeniable sense of responsibility. They trudged back toward the shelter, hearts racing against the unforgiving cold, confidence building with each passing step. Jake realized that true strength came not just from conquering his fears, but also from embracing the ability to effectuate change in someone else's life. And as they approached the door to safety, he wondered what other hidden strengths awaited him. Could stepping into role as a protector unlock even deeper layers of his identity? What haunting memories from his own past would he have to confront next? The answers lay just beyond the threshold, where the warmth of connection could lead to even greater revelations. As they burst through the door back into the shelter, the warm air enveloped them like a balm. The hearth glowed with a comforting light, and Jake felt a surge of relief wash over him alongside the palpable energy of their rescue. The girl released a shuddering breath, her small frame instinctively gravitating toward the warmth, but her brave eyes locked onto Jake's. "Thank you," she whispered, her gratitude laced with a blend of wonder and vulnerability. In that moment, Jake recognized something monumental. It wasn't simply the act of saving another. It was the reflection of his own redemption. He had moved from a man shrouded in despair to someone who could extend hope in the midst of chaos. Jake breathed deeply, absorbing the collective strength of the group surrounding him. Emma, Mark, and Hannah were no longer mere allies. They had transformed into a community bound by their storytelling, flawed, yet resilient. Each of them had faced their own storms, but now they were united in purpose. "Let's help the girl get warm and fed," Emma urged, her voice beckoning the others into action. Her innate leadership shone through, a new layer of confidence blossoming as she took charge. Jake's heart swelled with pride at her transformation. Just weeks ago, she had stood trapped by the fear of what her past meant for her future, yet now she was steering their ship through turbulent waters. As they gathered around, blankets enveloping the girl, a sense of mutual healing began to unfold. With every shared smile and warm gesture, Jake's awareness of his own evolution crystallized. He had not only rescued the girl, but reinstated the purpose that had slipped away in his pursuit of solitude. He was no longer relegated to the shadows. He had entered the light, clear-headed and resolute. "Let's share our stories again, this time in a different light," Jake suggested, his voice steadier than it had ever been. "What we've learned from the storms we faced inside and outside is a treasure trove of resilience." This time, rather than fear, excitement flickered through the room. As each person opened up with renewed honesty about their lessons learned, Jake felt empowered. They spoke of the pain that shaped them, and the courage they unearthed along the way. With every word shared, the walls that had once partitioned them from each other crumbled, revealing the undeniable truth of their interconnectedness. I learned that solitude is often a mask for my insecurities, Mark admitted, his gaze now filled with unfiltered vulnerability. In team, there's not just strength, there's growth. We can't thrive alone. Nods floated around the room, with Emma adding, I realized vulnerability isn't weakness. It's where true courage lies. I want to honor my family's legacy by breaking free from the past's shadows. Each confession echoed with the resonance of triumph over turmoil, building to a powerful tide of awareness that encapsulated Jake's profound realization. Their stories, anchored in struggle yet liberating, could rewrite the very narratives they had feared. He looked around the room at the faces illuminated by hope, and he recognized in each a reflection of his own journey. The scars were there, yes, but they no longer bore only the weight of missteps. They sparkled with the potential for transformation. They had not just survived the storm but emerged resilient and renewed. In that instant, Jake understood a quintessential truth. Real achievement and recognition come not from the external world's applause but from embracing one's authenticity, confronting fears, and forging genuine connections. He felt a solid confidence rising within him, a confirmation of his established place, no longer shackled by judgment or doubt. With the warmth of self-acceptance washing over him, he made eye contact with Emma, who smiled back, a silent affirmation of their shared growth and the path ahead. In that moment, he finally conquered the battle against his past, stepping into a future crafted from courage, connection, and the undeniable power of human spirit. As they stood together, united in purpose and overflowing with possibility, Jake realized the greatest triumph was not merely overcoming the blizzards that surrounded them, but finding the strength to face their internal storms. Realizing that true growth was forged through vulnerability, resilience, and profound connection. And just as dawn began to peek through the window, spilling soft light across the room like a promise fulfilled, he knew one thing for certain. It was time to embrace whatever would come next and turn toward newly forged destinies. If you have experienced this transformative journey alongside Jake and Emma, then you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for stories of personal overcoming. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these stories reach those who need them most. Comment below with your reactions and thoughts about Jake's journey and what it means to create connection amidst chaos. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who also deserve to experience this powerful conclusion. Don't wait, even one more second, to illuminate their paths to personal breakthroughs.